All right, guys, what's up? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. So in my previous XDefiant video, in the comment section, some of you guys were quick to tell me that if Ubisoft themselves is actually, if it's true of what Tom Henderson says, and if Ubisoft is actually asking the devs or demanding of the devs to put more content in the game, then that's what they're going to do, right? If Ubisoft, of all people, is telling the devs to put more content in the game, that means there needs to be more content in the game. Simple as that. So with that being said, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. We're going to talk about what we can possibly expect, as well as how long we think it's going to take before the game actually releases with this new content, right? Okay, so let's start out with the very obvious, right? Game modes. As of right now, we've got Domination, Occupy, and Hotshot for the arcade game modes, and then we've got linear game modes, which are Zone Control and Escort. That is 5 game modes, which isn't very much. There's 14 maps that we're supposed to have at launch, at least according to the last time we got updated on this in terms of what we're going to get at launch, which is basically the same thing as beta. But obviously it's been 5 months, so we can definitely expect more things, right? Because we would be well on our way to season 2 if the game had released originally when it was supposed to, which was supposed to be October. Now, with that being said, what game modes are we talking about? Now, let's start with the very obvious. Come on, Team Deathmatch. Team Deathmatch must be in the game at launch. Why do you think the vast majority of casual players pick Team Deathmatch? It is the most casual and popular game mode in first-person shooter history, and I've said it time and time again on this channel, you cannot ignore historic facts. It continues to be true of Call of Duty. It continues to be true of so many other first-person shooters out there that have the game in there. It is very true. There's only a couple of games out there that are the exception to the rule. But in the case of an arcade shooter, this is definitely not the case. So I know that Hotshot is their kind of like Team Deathmatch variant, but let me tell you something, man. You gotta have a Team Deathmatch mode. And what is so hard about having that? It's not hard to put it in there. You know, it's just take all the, change the score limit. You know, it's like taking Hotshot and changing the score limit and taking the tags and the power-ups out of there. And wham bam, what do you got? You got Team Deathmatch. Simple as that. Okay, next up, we've already been told that there is a search and destroy mode kind of, coming, and I would assume that if the game did release on time, that it would be out by now, and it would be in ranked and in pubs, simply because of the fact that when you look at the history of Call of Duty, pub players as well as people in ranked love search and destroy. Search and destroy in Call of Duty is actually one of the more popular game modes, so I think it would be very reasonable to expect something like that. Now, there's 2 more things I have in mind. The first one is, it is a personal request, but at the same time, it makes sense to me as well. The only way it doesn't make sense is the fact that XDefiant is a team-based game. But despite that, I mean, even with specialists in Black Ops 3 and in Black Ops 4, free-for-all still worked very well. It's not as popular, but you have to have something in there for the solo player. The solo player is not going to want to just play on teams all the time, even though they might not play in a party or with anybody at all and just themselves. Still, there's still something different about a free-for-all, and the arcade mode maps, I mean, certainly, have potential to have free-for-all in there in terms of how big those maps are and whatnot. Okay, so now, with that being said, what's next? Now, I remember when the XDefiant beta was finished or was close to being finished, I remember watching an episode of from the desk of XCal, from the Great XCalizors, and he was talking about XDefiant. And I remember in that video, and I'm paraphrasing here, he had mentioned something about like, the maps being a little big, and or something of the fact that he thought that it would have been great if it was like a 9v9 instead of a 6v6. Well, why can't we have a game mode that is simply put 9v9 for the arcade modes like Domination, Occupy, and Hotshot? And of course, for the linear modes, maybe we can have a 12v12. Why not try something like that? Because the linear modes like Zone Control and Escort have bigger maps, and all the maps are not used for every game mode. Hotshot has specific rotation of maps, which are limited to 3 or 4. Same thing with Domination and Occupy. And of course, the same thing goes with Zone Control and Escort. So we're getting 14 maps, right? But if you only play a certain type of game mode, like a lot of casuals do with Team Deathmatch, for instance, let me tell you, it's going to get boring and stale really quick. Well, not boring maybe, but it's going to get stale really quick, and the game is going to kind of wear off a hell of a lot faster if there's only 3 maps that are going to be rotating by. Simple as that. So I think things like a 9v9 or a 12v12 will help mitigate that for sure. So just another idea, and I'm pretty sure the devs have heard about it before. There's no way in the world I could be the only person talking about it. There's no way XCal is the only person that's mentioned it or thought of it. So I think that would be a hell of an idea. Now, with that being said, you put all those things together, you're talking about another 4 or 5 additional modes, so that you would make then at launch you would have 9 to 10. Hey, that's an improvement, right? So, and obviously things like features, the prestige mode, we can expect that at launch. Kill cams, expect that at launch. Custom button map layout, expect that at launch. And of course, the combat record, expect that at launch. Oh, and one more thing, ranked needs to be working at launch, like launch with ranked mode. Simple as that, to where you have your ranked mode and all the levels and stuff like that and how that works, league play or whatever you want to call it, competitive mode. Have it fully functional and working as opposed to testing again and again, right? I know you've been doing a lot of internal testing, no doubt about it. You've got your data from the beta and stuff like that. Well, I'm sure you have a system in place that you're already thinking about using, so it's like, well, you might as well use it. It's been 5 months since you were originally supposed to release, according to what we know. So would you not have ranked mode ready in these 5 months? Of course you would. All right. And of course, additional maps. So that way we have more, we already know they're 10 maps deeper than what we saw. So I'm not saying necessarily launch all those 10 maps from the beginning, but if we get another additional solid 5, that would help. That would give us, like, let's say, another 2 or so maps per game mode, if you think about it, because ranked has its own sort of thing, and then you got your pubs. So again, every little bit helps. And of course, next up, of course, are the weapons, right? It's what we're playing with. So as far as weapons are concerned, we already know that there's been some sort of word behind the scenes that the G36C assault rifle is going to be a thing in the game. There's no doubt about it. I'm pretty sure there's going to be, like, let's say a SCAR or something like that, or like, let's say an MP40 or in multiplayer or something like that. And as well as completely fictional weapons, because usually with some of the games like Call of Duty, what they'll do is, especially the futuristic Call of Duties, like for instance Black Ops 3, they take versions of current weapons and they fictionalize them, and they change the numbers up, change the name up a little bit, or add or take away from the name. But it's essentially a similar type of weapon, kind of drawn inspiration from that kind of weapon, right? So in terms of what we've seen in Call of Duty and some other first-person shooters, there's more than enough weapons to play around, and I'm pretty sure that they've designed a good amount of them already. So just like the whole map thing, I'd say put a handful of those weapons in the game. I know we have 4 shotguns and 4 snipers, if memory serves correct, or something along those lines. So that could be fine, but as far as assault rifles and SMGs go, we need to buff that number up. And of course, adding in a couple of really cool melee weapons, like even if it's a little bit goofy, like for instance, can you imagine running around on Noodleplex, right? And you got a baseball in your hand and you can just throw it at people, and if you actually catch your target, if you hit the target, it's an instant kill and the ball bounces right back in your hand, and you try to get more kills with it. I mean, it's goofy as hell, no doubt about it, but hey, it's meant to be a casual game as well. Sure, it could be competitive when you go to ranked or whatever the deal is, but at the same time, if it's meant to support casual play with no SBMM and all that other stuff, well, you can have a couple of melee weapons here and there. I know that some content creators would love it, but more importantly, I think a lot of fans would love it, because even though I was annoyed as shit during Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4, there were plenty of times where I died to some annoying crap, but at the same time, there's a big trade-off. It's like if they miss the target, it's like, uh-oh, they're in trouble and they're probably going to die. But if they hit their target, it's an inevitable kill that pretty much kills you instantly, faster than regular guns could, right? So that's the trade-off. And at the same time, it's goofy, and you get to, it keeps the casualness of the game alive, so to speak, and reminds people that it's not meant to be taken seriously. You want to go serious, you go to ranked mode. You want to not so serious or semi-serious, you go to pubs. Simple as that. All right. But I would say, I would say that's reasonable. I obviously don't want to be too unrealistic. So, and I'm kind of pushing the envelope as it is already, because I know, I don't know too much about development, but all I know is that every single thing you put into the game, you got to do continuous testing to make sure everything works. Because when you add things in, it could create bugs, and something else that was working before didn't work, it doesn't work as well anymore, or there's some kind of bug that needs to get removed or whatever the deal is. So there's constant testing going on. So when you're adding in a whole bunch of other crap, well, that's what happens. You get additional testing that needs to be done, so that way things like the party system that they worked on and everything else works properly. But with that being said, guys, I would say this is enough for launch. You know, you put everything together, what I just said in this video, I'd probably say that's more than enough. And I think they can do it. But the question is, when do you think the game will release? If it's not going to release in this month, which is looking like to be the case, in order to get this extra type of content in, when do you guys realistically believe this game will release? Do you think it will be a month delay? Do you think it's going to be 2 months delay? Because it really just depends on the content. We know that a lot of the content has been made already because they've been months ahead in terms of the DLC and all that stuff. So if anything, they just got to push it for launch. So I'm assuming they're probably doing a whole bunch of testing to make sure everything is as ready and as functional as it could possibly be for launch. Because despite all that, well, they need to have content at launch. And with that being said, I also want to know in the comment section, do you guys think they were butting heads because of the fact that, you know, they're not launching yet and they were planning to launch with less and all that? Or do you guys think that the devs are butting heads with the upper management because there's something else going on? All right, now with that being said, that's all I got for this one, guys. Let me know down in the comment section what you think and what your predictions are. And as always, I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to watch and or listen, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.